nobody really has a clear answer to all the dynamics of immigration, but politicians are always very tempted to pick out individual groups and say, this is wrong, we're going to clamp down on that in favour of the people who are here.
Immigration to this country, legal or otherwise, has been a theme of the programme today on Times Radio. The Conservatives say that if they form the next government, anyone who isn't British will be barred from social housing, even if they have settled status here. Labour said the plans would lead to a rise in homelessness, while also announcing their clampdown on people working illegally. We've also covered the violent disorder in Thetford, where for the third night in a row, a mob of locals has been targeting homes where they believe asylum seekers are staying. Well, with us to talk about the politics of immigration is Times Radio presenter and political commentator Adam Boulton. Adam, good morning.
Good morning.
Shall we start with this policy that has grabbed quite a lot of attention from the Conservatives here? Some of it is borrowed and a little bit watered down from Reform UK policy that we'd heard about a couple of months ago. But in essence, tell us what their plan is, because it's pretty firm and strident.
Yeah, I mean, we've actually got two initiatives from Conservatives this morning. There's the one you're talking about revoking the right to council housing for foreigners with special status. I think that one is one which will strike a chord with the public, although going ahead, the idea of actually evicting people from homes they've been given would clearly be problematic. The other policy we've had this morning is sort of freelancing by the Conservative MP Neil O'Brien, formerly of the Policy Exchange. He really is continuing with the whole Brexit war question, saying that a number of people he calls foreigners, but in fact he's talking about Europeans who've been given status to remain in this country as a result of the Brexit deal, that although that was meant to end 5 years ago, some Europeans since then, a total of about 150,000 have been given right to remain, and they therefore, because they have a right to be here, are getting access to student loans. Now, what I think is interesting and shows that public opinion on this is very divided is that on the straw polls, which Times Online runs on its website, we have a clear majority of the public thinking that it's wrong to give foreigners access to council housing. But on the other hand, a majority not bothered by the idea of Europeans who've been given special status actually having access to the student loan system, even although, as the report from Neil O'Brien says, there is a default rate marginally higher amongst those people with special status compared to British nationals getting student grants. But I think the point about all this is it's in the context of parties on the right wanting to appear more against immigrants because they know of any kind, because they know that strikes a chord with some voters. And of course, at the far extreme, we've got Rupert Lowe of Restore Britain refusing to say whether the King qualifies as a white Briton.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually been a week of immigration policy, hasn't it? Because we started the week with Reform UK talking about their plans to say they'd use the Royal Navy to send people crossing the Channel straight back to France, which France then said, no, we're not going to do that. We think that breaches into international law. So not without complications. In that mix, actually, Adam, we were speaking earlier to Anna Turley, the Border Security and Asylum Minister, who was sort of announcing results from a Home Office clampdown on people working illegally. How credible would you say are the claims that this government is taking seriously and actioning their plans when it comes to finding people who are here illegally and then sending them out of the United Kingdom?
Well, I can't monitor everything that they do, but we can look at the official statistics which are given, which show, for example, that the rate of illegal boat crossings has reduced, and the government has also produced figures about the number of people that they are eventually expelling from this country, and that has gone up. Now, of course, the previous Labour government, the Starmer government, did feel that digital identity cards were important ways of controlling illegal working in this country. But that is a policy which, as we know, Andy Burnham has wound up. We're not going to now have those digital ID cards, at least at the moment. So, these things come and go. And underlying all this, there is a certain amount of lack of full frankness, really. I mean, we do know that in economic terms, businesses, farmers are very much in favour of having immigrants coming in to do some of the, particularly the low-paid jobs which they offer. We know that governments, for example, the famous Boris wave of nearly 1 million people coming in when Boris Johnson was in power, that was because it was felt that those workers were needed to get the economy growing. So, and we also know the realities of the sort of things that we saw in Ceuta of, enormous numbers of people coming out, particularly from the Sahel in Africa, but elsewhere, and wanting to share in what they see as the more civilized and more rewarding climates in the West. And that's something that all European countries face. And so nobody really has a clear answer to all the dynamics of immigration, but politicians are always very tempted to pick out individual groups and say, this is wrong, we're going to clamp down on that in favour of the people who are here. It's a kind of, form of nativist politics, which has a genuine appeal, because people do feel threatened by people who are different from them arriving on their doorstep or in their workplace or wherever.
Final thing I want to ask you about, Adam, we've sort of been talking about this throughout the programme. Andy Burnham's appeal on social media, we learnt that it's 36% of the population have seen some kind of content produced by him or his team, which is a pretty good level of success at this point. Do you think he's at risk later down the line of it being a bit silly, a bit blokish?
Well, it's interesting that apparently people in the government media unit have said this to him. My own view would be twofold. First of all, that we know that younger people are increasingly accessing their information on social media and through things like short videos which are posted. So that has to be an asset for the Labour Party and indeed the government if Andy Burnham is so successful in reaching them, and indeed, as we were hearing earlier on Times Radio, more successful, for example, than Nigel Farage. I think, he is successful partly because he is authentic, that both the medium and the sort of things he's putting into it do reflect his character, whereas I think previous ministers and even members of the opposition politicians, a lot of them have looked rather artificial and forced in their attempts to, as it were, get down with the kids. Andy Burnham, I think, is of that generation. He's quite good at it. The one reservation I would have is that the government media unit clearly wants to blend Andy Burnham's social media with increased use of the government's social media. And of course, we've got to move towards doing more and more things online generally. And I think there is a risk that if Andy Burnham carries on like this, he's not necessarily going to generate the authority and respect which a Prime Minister needs to be able to govern effectively, let alone for people to come to his website. So I think, good luck to him, but he does need to try and develop this.
Thank you so much for your time and analysis. That's Adam Boulton, the Times radio and political commentator. We've had a WhatsApp in from Macca who says, yes, we want a Prime Minister, not a social media influencer. It's probably possible to do both.
Well, and arguably nowadays you have to be both. I would suggest. Can you be a Prime Minister without the social media prowess? I'm not sure you can.
A big policy on immigration and cracking down on illegal working. What's the idea?
Yeah, so we've got the Tories today. They're coming forward with a policy talking about not letting them have any access to social housing, and this is what they want to talk about today. About Kemi Badenoch, who is going to be talking about essentially a reheated reform policy, really, and she's going to be announcing it this afternoon, and it's going to be essentially that foreigners who do not have indefinite leave to remain won't have access to social housing. That's going to mean a lot of people are losing social housing, and I think this is going to be quite a controversial policy and something which I think the Tories have to have the fight on.
Yeah, we'll speak to the Tories 7:45 this morning. There's a little bit of confusion here, Stefan. The estimate is this would be about 230,000 people. So that'd be people who would be evicted. And do we have an answer of where they would then go?
Well, this is going to be the key question to it, I think, because it is a policy essentially to say that, as you say, 250,000 people will be evicted. That is an administrative and a moral challenge, and I think that there would have to be. I'm just speculating here. There would probably have to be some sort of time frame. You'd have to give these people quite a long run up, you'd think, and you'd essentially have to say that they have to go to the private rental sector, and I think that's going to be something that will have a massive backlash, but. As I said before, clearly the Tories think that this is an area where a lot of people in this country do think that people who are born overseas and come here do get too many benefits, and this is one they're targeting.
Yes, so it's sort of two things. It's saying who's going to be eligible for social housing, but also then getting rid of those people from their homes if they don't fit the criteria. I guess another question, Stefan, as to whether it is fair to instill a new role on people who had already, by a local authority, their application had been looked at and said, yeah, OK, you qualify, and it is quite difficult to get a house on social housing.
Yeah, there seems to be a trend across immigration policy at the moment, even from the government in, the Labour, Tories and Reform all bring out policies, immigration policies, that punish people retrospectively who are following the rules. And then all three parties have been proposing changes to the rules that affect people already here. For instance, Labour are doing this with increasing the number of years you need for permanent residency from 5 years to 10 years. And that includes people who are already here. And, I think that Reform, for instance, is suggesting that people who are already given their permanent residency, given their indefinite leave to remain, can have it stripped from them. And I think this is a trend across politics now, that immigration policy is being looked at through the lens that you can strip people of entitlements that have already been given, and these are people who have already been following the rules.
Yeah, and if we look at the list, it's 1.3 million people are currently waiting for social housing. So the bigger question, Stefan, I think will be, the problem surely is that we don't have enough homes, not changing the criteria who can have a social home.
Yeah, I think that goes to the heart of a lot of the problems in this country, for the the housing crisis, the affordability question, the reason why rents are so expensive in London, particularly in major cities. And clearly there is an acknowledgement that the country does need to build a lot more homes, but this government, which has promised 1.5 million houses in 5 years, has no chance of meeting that target. And despite its reforms to the planning system, it looks like it's on track to actually do, if not equal, then even worse than the last government did on house building.
Yeah, some couple of other stories worth talking about. The government today are going to talk about the results of what they're describing a major clampdown on people working here illegally. They say over the past week, more than 900 businesses have been raided. 250 or so arrests, a fifth of those linked to small boat arrivals. Is this the government genuinely making progress on people coming here and then working here illegally?
Look, we've seen these blitzes before, particularly when Labor first got in the first 6 months. They had a real big blitz when Yvette Cooper was Home Secretary on, for instance, nail bars and illegal working practices in nail bars and other high street shops across the country. And they made a really big comms push of it to try to act as a deterrent. But I think that what we see is that, there needs to be deeper reform, and you will get these moments every now and then, big sort of media moments where they draw back the curtain and show some of the enforcement work that's been done to stop illegal working. But I think that overall there probably needs to be a more holistic, more sort of deep-rooted reform to how we actually sort of let people into this country.
Yeah. Okay, a couple of other things I want to talk about, Stefan. The first being, we've talked about this Burnham bounce a little bit, haven't we? We know he's on holiday this week. Much has been discussed there. But inside the Times today, Labour risks having its membership figure overtaken by the Greens. What's happening here?
Yeah, so it's now very, very close. There's been a big bounce in membership numbers for Zach Polansky's party since Zach Polansky became leader. And now the membership of the Green Party is just about 35,000 less than Labour, which is a long-term trend because, the Labour membership, it peaked under Jeremy Corbyn. It has been on a downward trajectory ever since. And I think that as you see now, a lot of former Corbynites going to the Green Party. I mean, really, the Green Party is a hub for a lot of the people who have left Labour or kicked out of Labour in the last 5 or 6 years. You are seeing a lot of younger, more left-wing people going and joining the Greens. And so in terms of membership numbers, they are very even. But I think that the argument from the previous Labour leadership, and probably from a lot of people around Andy Burnham, is that they'd much rather have that and much rather not be anywhere near a lot of the sort of cranks that are, flooding to the Greens at the moment.
Yeah, it's really interesting and worth reading. That's Aubrey Allegretti's piece in the Times today. And on the front page of the paper, Andy Burnham's been told he's being too blokey. Should we just listen to a couple of examples? This was the Prime Minister chatting with the Chancellor in the pub.
When did you last buy a pack of pork scratchies in a pub?
2 weeks ago.
Oh, now, talking about old school, I mean, come on.
Scampi fries.
Come on. You could tell when somebody had had a pack of scampi fries, couldn't you?
For at least a couple of hours.
At least a couple of hours.
It's not the nicest image at 20 to 7. But also, here he is talking about football too.
So, just what you need after 6 hours in Oral on the doorstep today is a bit of football therapy.
So, Stefan, this has very much been a strategy, hasn't it? A very different tone and style of Prime Minister to that of Keir Starmer. What's the feedback Andy Burnham's had?
Well, Andy Burnham has inherited civil servants as a part of a social media team in Number 10, and these sort of boffins have come in and told him that he should scrap his current strategy, and that his, the people close to him who do his personal communication, his personal social media page, that they should stop concentrating so much on the football, on pubs, on this sort of blokey persona he's really created online. I gotta say I disagree with them. I understand their point that he needs to appeal to a lot of people across the country, including many sort of Middle England voters who went for Labour at the last election. But I think that it's important that he does maintain some sort of semblance of authenticity, and I think that he does play quite well to working class voters, to northern voters. Also, just frankly, to a lot of average people in this country who like football and like going to the pub, like myself. So, I mean, I think that if this is what he wants to do, he should do it.
And standing up drinking in the pub as well, as Number 10 decided to wade in on. Stefan, something Calum and I talked about this morning. Andy Burnham has replied to a lot of individuals on X or even on Instagram, I think, or on TikTok. Do you suspect that is Andy Burnham, or is it one of his team who are doing the replies for him?
I think, sadly, it's probably one of his team members. I think that he started this especially during the Makerfield campaign. He was really active, and he would be rebutting individual, claims from journalists, from activists, from people online. I reckon at that time, maybe a couple of them were sprinkled in his voice. Now, as PM, I think a lot of them, especially because they're quite toned down, they're probably some Gen Z social media manager for him.
OK, Stefan, thank you very much. Stefan Boscia, the politics newsletter editor at The Times. Do you remember, talking about politicians being authentic on social media, do you remember when, for the Conservative leadership campaign, Rory Stewart ran?
Oh, yeah.
And he did selfie videos.
Yes.
But they actually weren't selfie videos. They were videos pretending that they were. Do you remember?
I do know.
It's just come to my mind. And then someone said, are you pretending to take a selfie video? So he was sort of positioned as though he was, but actually it was one of his staff or team actually doing the filming, and he said, yes, I was pretending.
I mean, it's just too ludicrous, isn't it? What a world is this? There is that thing about authenticity versus being a bit too laddie or whatever. Is a fascinating kind of dilemma, I suppose. The classic thing always in a moment of crisis is that we hear that political staffers are channeling the West Wing, and they say, let Starmer be Starmer. And it's like, well, to what extent do you mean that? Because if you want Burnham to be Burnham, then you've got to let him just do his thing, don't you?
This
and
is
not try
it.
and rein it in.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Was Starmer ever truly himself
I
publicly?
don't know, and maybe he was, and that was the problem.
Or he was a very reserved version of himself. That's
Yes.
what lots of people who spent time with him said. It was sort of a slightly confusing picture, that he was very warm and very personable in person.
Yeah.
And then as soon as on the public stage, that sort of much more cardboard presentation came out.
Yeah, exactly.